Hi, my name is Shai Korman, and my favorite thing is music movies or movies with musical moments, especially really cool movie music end credits or beginning credit scenes.
Welcome to the Finding Favorites podcast, where we explore your favorite things without using an algorithm. Here's your host, Leah Jones.
Hello and welcome to Finding Favorites. I'm your host, Leah Jones, and this is the podcast where we learn about people's favorite things and get recommendations without using an algorithm. We are back with a third-time guest, but also someone who has been a guest host 3 times, and that is Shai Korman from the podcast Friday Night, from the Signal Award-winning podcast, Friday Night Movie Podcast. Shai Korman and his sisters recently won an award and beat Conan O'Brien and the Chill Chums. And that is so amazing. And I'm so proud of you. And you worked so hard to secure the votes. Shai, how are you doing?
Thank you. First of all, thank you. I feel like you are a kindred spirit to me in our commitment to indie podcasthood. Mm-hmm. In the punk rock nature of being a podcast that is totally DIY. So while it was exciting and amazing and fun to have that victory, I feel like I was pushing for all of us who do the editing ourselves and who no one knows who we are by name unless they already listen to the show. And so it was really special, and it was really special to do with my sisters. And after 5 years of doing the show, really nice to be validated by our peers. But the validation I really need is being invited back on Finding Favorites.
It's a new year, and we got new favorites to talk about.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if there's one thing, and Allie, my wife, will always, it's sort of like it's what do they call it? It's a compliment. It's not really a backhanded compliment, but you will say, you have so many interests. Right, but it's not 100% a compliment. But I have there's a lot of favorite things I have. I think on this show I've done Serial and just the movie Cats.
Yes,
right, as a guest.
And you recently went to see Cats again with the host, or the same night as the host of The Wrong Cat Died.
So The Wrong Cat Died, hosted by Mike Abrams, another great podcast on the Broadway Podcast Network. Mike Abrams was going to do a bit with the cast, and he has this amazing thing coming out, this very funny thing that he did with all the cast members. And our family bought tickets for the same night of one of the nights he was going. And so we got to hang out.
Nice.
That was another great Potter and family moment.
That's fantastic. What else has been keeping you busy? You seem to be busy from the internet.
I like to liken my approach to what some people, how they approach their iPhone battery. Mm-hmm. I'm going to run it down until it crashes. And then I'm going to have to plug it in, and it's not even going to charge right away because it's got to do that thing where it's just shows you the sign. And that's what I think I'm just going to continue operating that way. Okay. But we've been doing the podcast, released an album with Howie, my lifelong musical partner.
Yes.
The band is What Does It Eat, and the album is called Scraps. And our first music video that we released from it is all of footage of people's dogs that they sent in, because Scraps is about a dog.
I love it. So
that's it. So there's been a lot cooking. How are you?
I'm doing good. This is, I think, episode 135
Amazing.
Of the podcast. Yeah, it's January of 2023, which feels completely insane.
I know there's a bit of a time travel element to all this. Mm-hmm. And 133 episodes, that's a huge accomplishment. That's amazing. Yeah. Way to go.
Thank you. And I've written about this on Facebook, that this is the week that's the anniversary of finishing chemotherapy for breast cancer. So I've been, ow, cowboy. That was so mean.
That was the cat. That's not the actual thing you've been expressing regarding chemotherapy. That was great. The way that, I've been feeling, I've been saying, ow, cowboy.
I mean,
and like someone who didn't know would be like, oh, is that like a thing people say on their
it's a thing people say in the
anniversary?
breast cancer community is, ow, cowboy. I would wear that shirt before I'd wear a big pink ribbon, honestly.
Ow, cowboy.
So it's just been like weird. Because I also finished chemo last year. My last month of chemo is when you and Amy Guth were guest hosting for me. Because that's when I was just completely out of juice. That's when my battery was...
Thank you for the chance to do that.
Oh, it was great. And you are always invited back if there's someone that you can get on to talk about a favorite. If you know, the people that you think you could get on an episode of Finding Favorites that you can't quite get on a Friday night movie, the episodes are always available.
That is how I used it too. I got two of my dream guests.
Yes.
That I wasn't sure if they would buy what Friday Night Movie was selling, but they loved Finding Favorites.
Yeah. So the end of my chemo was pretty... I went in on week 12, which was supposed to be the final week. And that's when they were like, oh, you're actually too sick for your final chemo. And the damage chemotherapy is doing to you currently is no longer worth the benefits
oh my gosh.
it'll give you in the future. Because my lungs at that point, like I could barely breathe. I was using a wheelchair in the hospital. Like I was in... Now I realize I was very sick at the end of chemo. But because I wasn't nauseous and because I still had my appetite, I just didn't register to me as being very sick. So they're like, you know, we're going to give you today's infusion of your immunotherapy, but surprise, chemo ended a week ago. So for me, like the anniversary is hard to remember because I was a little bit like disappointed that they took the last chemo away from me, but also I would have been so sick if they had done the final chemo.
Well, a year later, you look fabulous.
Thank you.
And I got to see you in person and give you a hug in person.
Yes.
This is our first time recording since we went to see Weird Al together.
I know.
Which was also amazing. And
that was so good.
It's great to see you with the spring back in your step.
It's great to have it back.
I wish you the Shlema-ist of Refuah Shlema.
Thank you.
That's like a real Hebrew.
So, Friday Night Movie Podcast is all about pop culture, but specifically movies. And we were kicking around what are other favorites you could talk about, and you decided movies and music.
Movies and music. It's one of my favorite topics, and I've been gestating a long time a spin-off podcast about this topic alone.
Mm-hmm.
But if, you know, one podcast is a lot of work, as you know. You do too. I don't know how you do too.
Right. Well, because the second one barely happens.
That's what usually happens. That's
right.
And I love music. I am a musician of sorts, but music is just been a happy place for me since I was 13, since I was even younger, but when I was in my bar mitzvah and I first started having agency over what I could pick when I got my first gift certificates.
Oh, yeah.
To Discus and A&A Music. Those were both music stores.
Oh, in Montreal.
In Montreal, yeah. Smaller music
like, what are these stores?
Pre-HMV taking over everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I still remember some of the first CDs I got, but having agency over my own music was just such an amazing experience, getting my CDs, and I'd sit and I'd listen to my room and I'd make mixes on tapes and I'd bring them in the car and then I'd argue with my dad over my music. I don't know if kids today will have the same thing because they don't get to own music the same way. They don't have a music collection. They have Spotify. I buy my kids CDs. They don't, they listen to them a little bit, but it's not the same.
Henry, my sister's oldest, was up recently and we were coming to my house from the United Center. Ronnie was driving in his Tesla to show off his Tesla. And Henry, we were like, what music do you want us to like, what should the soundtrack to this drive on the highway in this fancy car be? And so Henry logged into his Spotify in Ronnie's car to then be able to DJ like from his iPhone to the car.
Right. There was no like There's no 8-cord going from an iPod into that thing that looked like a cassette tape.
Right.
How that even was, who figured
How did
that
it work?
technology out? What an
Right.
amazing piece of technology. We'll get a wire and something that looks like a tape, and we'll just jam it in the tape player.
Yeah. And, this week I got, so a couple weeks ago I had Michael Shelley on, a DJ on WFMU.
Amazing.
And a musician who I have a CD of his that I've been listening to since 1999.
A mix.
No.
Or his own music.
His own music.
Amazing.
He opened for They Might Be Giants on my college campus in 1999.
That's incredible.
I bought his CD. They Might Be Giants were really rude to the student volunteers, and so I've written They Might Be Giants off.
Wow, that
25
surprises me because they seem like such nice dudes.
The backstage crew or their roadies ate the food, and then there wasn't food for They Might Be Giants, and they yelled at the student volunteers. But it was like the behavior of the people on the road with them.
Oh wow, that
right?
is
It
weird.
wasn't college students didn't eat the food. It was like their crew ate the food, which means their rider didn't have enough food information on it.
Not enough peeled M&Ms.
Yeah. So I'm like, I don't remember who they yelled at. I don't even know if it was true. I didn't fact check it. I have just written off They Might Be Giants since 1999 for one rumor I heard. But Michael Shelley, I have listened to his CD ever since. And he sent me a care package of like 6 CDs this week, which I added to my car CD collection, which is 4 CDs from you, mixed CDs from you, and now 6 Michael Shelley contributions.
Oh, that's great. I love car CDs. It's so great. There's something so secure about putting a CD in and it beginning, like it's contained. You don't have to worry about internet. It's just there beginning to end. And, new cars, no CD players, period. They don't exist. Yeah, there is no CD players in the cars at all.
Oh, I don't like that.
Isn't that weird?
That's super weird.
Right? Totally strange. That's it. You
So-
go buy a CD, you can't pop it into your car.
Right. You can only put it in your DVD player.
Does your car have a DVD player?
No, but in your house, your DVD player will play CDs.
That's a good point. Well, I still have CD players. I'll show you this. You've seen my office, but
Holy shit.
I have, that's just, this is just the stuff that's allowed on display.
On display.
There's boxes of, it's an unholy amount of boxes of CDs. And the floor is covered in them.
Yeah.
Still, I have to, I actually have admitted that I have to dial it back, and I still buy my music. In fact, people should buy, if you have the opportunity to buy music from someone, buy on Bandcamp, because the money actually goes to the artists, and the people whose music you need to buy most are the ones you should be buying from Bandcamp.
Yeah.
And then particularly if there's a Bandcamp Friday, which are these days where Bandcamp gives a bonus, like they give all of the money. They don't take a cut or something.
Right. They don't take a cut at all. Yeah.
And so I'm committing to buying some more stuff digitally, but I still buy my music, even though I pay for Spotify too. I love owning, and that dates back to that bar mitzvah. I love owning it and making the choice that I'm investing in this record.
Yeah. So for you, it's your bar mitzvah year. That's when you start getting agency over music. And when does the music in movies, or how do you define? How are you defining the topic that we're going to dive into?
So music. So there's 3 key categories. There's a lot of categories we can talk about. There's 3 categories we're going to talk about, and we're not going to touch concert films, documentaries. So no, The Last Waltz today. None of the rock docs.
Woodstock, not the.
Yeah, I could do those forever too. But so we're going to talk about movies as part of music as part of narrative on screen is really what we're going to dig into. And there's my favorite music movies or music. There's going to be some fudging of that because of where this all starts.
Yeah.
Then there's some music moments in movies, because I think about that all the time, where there's a moment where a song is used and I'm just moved and it captures everything, or it plays with the meaning of the song, or it's some kind of absurd use, or it's just the perfect use, or it builds tension. And then one of my favorite subjects is the use of music in credits, opening or closing credits. And I have a few weird ones to talk about.
Awesome.
But
so let's
it starts on screen for me with the Monkees.
Yes.
Do you remember Nick at Night? Or was it Nick at Night? Or whenever it was, when they were rerunning the Monkees in the 80s on either...
I was obsessed.
Right?
I was obsessed with Davy Jones. I was like, oh, I'm way more the Monkees over the Beatles. Like, I thought the Monkees were so much better than the Beatles.
So... my favorite band of all time, R.E.M., Michael Stipe has said that before, that the Monkees were, I don't know if they were serious about it or not, but the Monkees was definitely a huge influence on R.E.M. They used to cover Steppin' Stone and all of that. So I think there are a lot of people who like the zaniness,
Yeah, it was like a zany sitcom, kind of beach blanket bingo, zany
Beatles help
sitcom, but there was always at least one, and then they're like playing at the cafe, right? Like
they're always like a band
concert.
trying to get a gig.
Right. Oh, we watched the Monkees TV show all the time.
And so that was, if there was a time like I wanted to be a rock star.
Yeah.
And at first, my first obsession with the Monkees was Peter Tork. I thought Peter Tork was the coolest guy. And then I would go on to truly settle into loving Mickey Dolenz as my favorite Monkee. But I remember being at the beach one summer at Cape May with my friend Aaron Davis, lifelong friend, and we would listen to the theme song from the Monkees a lot. And I just loved this idea of, and I wanted to be a rock star because of them. So it starts there, and that mix of humor and rock stardom, and not taking yourself too seriously in rock stardom, has always been a part of my love of music, and so that's why it begins with the Monkees.
And even though the Monkees the show was zany, and in my head, I think I put them in a category with Weird Al. Accomplished music, like they were good musicians, which is something I can appreciate as an adult that I don't think I appreciated as a kid, because it seemed like they were a parody of a band.
Right. And they didn't write most of their songs that were famous. They had Neil Diamond and other people, because they were a corporate kind of creation. Yeah,
but isn't that okay? Like, do bands have to write their own music? Like,
no, it's totally fine. And Mike Nesmith was already a very accomplished musician, and then they'd go on to be. I mean, I've seen them play, Peter Tork and Mickey Dolenz. I saw those two; they were great, and they learned. I think they actually might have learned a lot of their instruments as part of the process, but that's fine. They were playing characters; they still sang, right?
Yeah.
No one's asking Ariana Grande, amazing singer, if she's playing keyboard on the album.
Right.
Or I don't know if she writes the songs, but somehow I think there are songwriters working with her.
Yeah, I think they're songwriters, and I think that's fine.
Yeah, totally. Elvis didn't write his songs, regardless of what the credits say.
All right, so it starts with the Monkees.
And
you're like, I want to be a rock star because... And do you envision yourself as a rock star with a TV show and a band? Is that what rock star means to you at the time?
I don't know if I even made that kind of connection. I just loved the idea of playing music on stage. And I'm not a rock star, but playing music on stage for a crowd is the best.
Agreed. I feel the same way about comedy, about doing, even though I'm a failed stand-up comic, like I love being on a stage. Let me MC an event. Let me get a giggle. Let me get an applause. It's getting that energy is really fun.
Oh yeah, tension, working for it, all of that. Although I think stand-up comedy is 1,000 times harder than music. 1,000 times. 1,000 times more precise, complex.
It's more like
lonely.
It's more like jazz than other types of music. Yeah. Last night I was, I'm deeply involved in the Doughboys fan community.
Of course.
And the Doughboys.
Is that your Doughboys shirt?
It is.
Okay.
It's the one I wore to your house.
Yep. I know.
It's my avatar on this recording website I'm using. Like, it's my favorite sweatshirt right now. And So at the beginning of every mainline episode, there's a drop, which is, like a radio drop that it's a fan edit, like a 30-second fan edit.
That's great.
Joke at the beginning. And I have submitted one, and I've submitted a few. One has been used so far. And last night, someone on the Discord said, can anyone help me? Like, I need some samples of someone singing. Can anyone help? And I was like, I can try. So he was like, can you sing this one word, in all of the notes of a scale? Like, whoa. Do, re, mi, fa, so. And so I did it, but I did the non-parody version. I did a really good job, and I sent it to him. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even say the word you wanted. So then I do it again. I send him the correct word, and he's like, hey, he's like, this is amazing. Do you think you could record it and be like a little shoutier? And
whoa. And hit the notes.
And do a chromatic scale. The white keys and the black keys.
Okay, I'm a musician, but got it. Chromatic, okay. I'm a drummer. We don't have scales of anything.
Right. Every note of the octave. And I sent him a 10-minute audio clip of me finding YouTube videos, trying to sing along with them, failing miserably. And I would sing like 4 notes, and I'd be like, I'm singing the same note. I'm like, the note is not changing. And it's hilarious. And it did make me think maybe going and getting voice lessons as an adult would be a fun thing to do.
That's fun. I can't make pitch and hear it and make my voice land in the same place. Mm-hmm. It's not a natural ability of mine. And if you can, like, you could do that already with this video that you made, like, that's incredible. You should.
Well, it turns out I can do a C major scale only.
Oh, okay.
When I tried to add in the flats and sharps in the middle, it was like...
There are MIDI devices that can help with that.
Oh, I tried.
That's amazing.
So, it starts with the monkeys.
So it starts with the monkeys, and then as time goes on, as I talk about movies where music is central to the story, where musicians are often central to the story, I have a few other moments. One of them is, well, there's Spinal Tap, which was a huge part of growing up as a musician. Like Howie and I, we'd watch Spinal Tap over and over and over again, as everyone did growing up when we did it, right? There's no musician that can't speak in up to 11 or, like it's just part of the, and then Mr. Holland's Opus was a really big one for me.
Because that's about a high school orchestra director finishing his opus, finishing his grand work and having the orchestra play it, right?
Yeah, and ish. Ish. Yeah, and although you go back, there's a little bit of kind of a creepy, there's one creepy plot line in that movie, but and it's about him struggling. He has a deaf son. So it is part of what he's dealing with is the unrealized dreams of making this symphony and not settling, but appreciating and being grateful for the symphony of his life. And I didn't appreciate that message as much, but I just appreciated this journey that he went on, and the music at the end made me cry. It was a few times I've cried in a movie. But when you think about like life, and you think about what you set out to do and appreciating it and liking your life at the same level, right? Not having regrets.
Yeah.
And him, and I think that's one of the things about that character is that he has to learn to really embrace and love his life. And in some ways he spends a lot of time not being happy because he doesn't. So anyways, but Mr. Holland's Opus, the music in it and his love for music is so beautiful.
Yeah.
But then, whereas Spinal Tap was a funny band and Monkeys are a parody band, right? These are two parody bands.
Yeah.
The first band movie that just blew my mind was The Commitments. Have you ever seen The Commitments?
I feel like there was just a viral fact about that movie, right? About like whoever wrote the main song.
Oh, wow. Well, the Commitments, a lot of the songs were
Isn't Tom
covered.
Hanks in it?
No, that's That Thing You Do.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, unfortunately, Adam Schlesinger, who wrote That Thing You Do, died of COVID. It was terrible. It was heartbreaking. Tom Hanks also co-wrote it, but Adam Schlesinger, God, what an incredible musician. But The Commitments is about a working class band in Ireland that decides to be a soul band and play the music of Wilson Pickett and Percy Sledge. And it's about the manager putting together the band. And it's about the very quick rise and fall. And it's a movie a lot like The Full Monty. You know, these like British, or in this case, Irish for Americans,
working
right? Like
class,
working
like,
class.
During the, who was that prime minister? The woman. During
Margaret
like, the
Thatcher.
years
It might have been
something?
Thatcher. Yeah, it might have been Thatcher. But yeah, it's a delightful, gritty movie where there's scenes of just them playing the songs of these folks from Ireland. And I think it captures something, which is how people overseas embrace and love American soul music. It has some really funny, quirky internal band politics.
Yeah.
And there's a hilarious bit about the drummer in it, where the drummer essentially gets switched out halfway through. And it's just a great band movie. And it's funny and it's got heart, and that's great. And then I think the idea of band movies really peaks. There's a lot of other band related, Rockstar with Marky Mark and things like that. But I think band movies really peak with That Thing You Do. 1997.
Okay.
1997? I'm pretty sure it's 97. Tom Hanks directed it. It was a movie I think he'd always wanted to make. Tom Everett Scott plays the Tom Hanks avatar in that movie. Guy Patterson, the drummer, which again, as a drummer, I love that the drummer is the main character. Tom Hanks is in it as Mr. White, who's the businessman. He's not bad or good, but he's the music business guy.
Wasn't he also the music business guy in Elvis?
He was
Colonel Tom Parker.
He was Colonel Tom Parker. Colonel Tom Parker is a malevolent character. Mr. White is more just, he is what he says he is. And, if you don't do what he says, those are the breaks. Right. And one hit wonders come and go. He's very practical.
Yeah.
But he also does a great thing with them, and he has respect for Guy, and he has a sense of, anyway. So, but yes, that is interesting that Tom Hanks play that. And then,
so the two pieces of trivia that were going around on Twitter recently for this were that Tom Hanks wrote the script while doing the promo tour for Forrest Gump because he was so bored with the same interview questions being asked. So he just wrote a screenplay.
Wow.
And then Adam Schlesinger, who is the bass player for Fountains of Wayne, wrote the title song in response to a contest being held by the studio because they were trying to find a song that could be, you had to have a believable pop song.
It had to play. I mean, I remember the interviews about that movie. You have to have a song that you are willing to hear and want to hear over and over and over again. And that song is it. And Adam Schlesinger, the things he's given us. So the music of Fountain of Wayne, the music of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. He's one of he was the key author. I mean, he co-authored lots of different pieces of it with Rachel Bloom and other folks. But like, he's the guy behind that. And then a bunch of other things. Josie and the Pussycats, right? Like, there's a lot of movies where if you go and you look and see his death is, such a terrible loss for music. So That Thing You Do, I think that peaks band movies. And then that segues into my other theme, which is music movie moments.
Yeah.
Because people, I love this question. This is one of my favorite questions to ask people is, what's your favorite music movie moment? And I asked that question to you, Leah. But mine will always be the moment where they first hear their song on the radio and they are running through the streets and they gather at the appliance store and they're dancing around and Steve Zahn grabs the cardboard cutout of the woman and he's dancing with her and it just, moves into this fervor of optimism and possibility of rock and roll and breaking against what the the sort of like hardworking parents were trying to do. Everything about it is so great. And so for me also, then there's a different, other than movies about music, then there are moments that are just magical. And that to me is the number one.
Yeah. I think that, so I loved Harry Connick Jr. before I saw When Harry Met Sally. And because I didn't see When Harry Met Sally until my freshman year of college. When then it rocketed up to being one of my number one favorite movies. Recently I realized I'm like 15 years older than they are at their oldest in the movie.
I mean,
isn't that weird?
Is Billy Crystal ever believable? Is he supposed to be in his 20s in that movie? Was Billy Crystal ever really 20 other than on Soap Dish?
Yeah, they're basically like
Soap Dish.
It's from college graduation, so it's like 21, 22 over the course to 32.
I don't know. Billy Crystal will never be in his 20s as far as I'm concerned. Right. He's always in his 40s.
But that Harry Connick soundtrack to When Harry Met Sally is phenomenal. So I love the movie and the music in that. But so that's like not necessarily a moment. It is just...
Well, the whole thing can be a moment.
The whole thing. But then it also makes me think of... did you see the movie Her?
I did not. That's the... Scarlett Johansson is the voice of the AI that becomes friends with Joaquin Phoenix.
Yes.
Yeah, I've not ever... I'm sure it's great, but I have not ever like wanted to see it.
So it's really, the sound design is really interesting. I don't think there's a song in the movie. Like there's not a soundtrack because it's just, he's constantly wearing ear pods with like white noise cancellation. And so the whole movie is very quiet.
Wow.
And it is the opposite. And when I left, I was like, I don't think I liked it because I didn't like how there was like nothing. The sound design was so crisp and noise canceled until the last minute when she leaves them. Sorry, spoiler alert for a fucking 10-year-old
now
movie.
I really don't want to see it. The robot leaves him?
The robot voice, the AI. His Alexa leaves him, falls in love with someone else.
I can't.
This is not. And then he takes the ear pods out and you hear like birds and cars driving by. And it's the first time in the whole movie you've heard.
That's a cool move. I mean, that's brilliant filmmaking. I love what you're describing. I just think the whole thing will give me anxiety.
Yeah, don't watch the movie.
But I love that that's a great choice for you. The absence and the tension from that is also...
Oh, yeah. And I noticed it. I was like, what is wrong with this movie? I was like, oh, there's no soundtrack. There's no music. It is just zip. And I'm not interested in that. Like, I want a needle drop. Manipulate me with your music, Hollywood.
I have some. So do you want? I would love to share some of my favorite music moments in movies.
Yeah,
and some of them are like recent ones. They're not, because like music moments in movies go like way back, right? There's Rocky. There's obvious ones like Rocky on the steps, right? There's well, pretty much any time the score in Indiana Jones or Star Wars kicks in, right? Like those things are the classic among classics. But I have some weird ones to pick here. This one is going to really skeeve out my sisters. So there's this movie that we just saw called X. It is a horror comedy, but more horror, and it stars Brittany Snow and oh my god, Mia Goth, and who has gotten a lot of praise for her. She plays two roles in this film. I'm not gonna get into the details of it because X is, but it's I would say in a sense it's body horror. But anyways, there is a scene in the film where Brittany Snow, who is in Pitch Perfect and all things, and she plays very against type in this. Yeah. She usually plays a pretty buttoned up character, and in this she plays a porn star. Okay. And there's a scene where she is singing Landslide, Stevie Nicks' Fleetwood Landslide, and it's juxtaposed with this scene of this older woman, because that's part of what's really interesting about X is the quote unquote body horror is really just aging, right? It's just the idea of people facing the idea of sexualizing old people. Yeah. And that's part of what makes this, it's also like a gruesome horror movie, but what I found really fascinating about X is that element of it. It's like, are you scared of this because it's a horror movie? Or are you scared of this because old people make you feel gross, right? Like, and that's what's like a really interesting part of this movie. And you have Brittany Snow, who is this very like classically beautiful person playing this very dolled up person singing Landslide. And it's juxtaposed with the old lady, I think, like putting makeup on herself in like a truly disturbing way. And to me, it captures the theme and what this movie is trying to say to perfection with a song that can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but I bet it's never been displayed this way before. And
it's so interesting.
And so for me recently, that's probably my favorite music moment, and it is truly, truly unsettling.
Yeah. I will not be watching that.
That is not. I can't recommend that movie, but it's part of a trilogy. 2 parts have come out. One's a prequel, one's a sequel, and I'm fascinated by what they've done here, and I really want to see more. Then in Eurovision, the Story of Fire Saga, which is Will Ferrell and Rachel McAdams. It's about the Eurovision contest. I love it. It also has a cameo of Netta Barzilai, who was the Israeli winner. The Israeli who won.
Yes.
But the final song, Husavik, My Hometown, which is sung by Will Ferrell, and the vocals are actually done by a woman named My Mary Ann, who I think is a Scandinavian singer. But Rachel McAdams sells it. I thought Rachel McAdams is so moving. I get close to tears every time I see it. I make my kids did not like this movie, and I make them listen to this song all the time.
I haven't watched it yet. It was a COVID release, right?
It was a COVID release, and it was a perfect COVID movie, but I love it. I love it, love it, love it. I've watched it so many times. And they
filmed a bunch of it at the real Eurovision, right?
Did they? I don't know anything about how they made it, but I
guess I thought they were.
It's
for some reason I thought they were on site and filmed it there.
There's a 90-minute movie. I think it's like a 2-hour movie. There's a 90-minute movie in there that I think would also be great, but it takes some really strange asides, particularly in playing around with Nordic culture's relationship with things like elves and things like that, like that sort of superstitions.
Okay.
It's just so funny. It's just like it could have been like an open and shut music competition movie. But it has just an edge of weird that is so awesome. I love it. I love that movie. So Husavik, though, is like, so here you are in this silly movie, but my eyes well up every time when you get to the end of that movie. And then I just watched this movie last night as part of the Sundance. You can order online some of the movies from Sundance, which I did not know until this year.
Yeah. It's new. It's not that you've been missing out.
Okay.
It's that it's a COVID. They did it. I talked to Liz Nord recently.
Who I refer to always as the great Liz Nord. I just quoted her on our last episode of the podcast.
That during COVID, because I think, well, so what? Sundance 2020 would have been one of like the last normal events, right? Because then South by got canceled. So then they made a push online, and now they have much more online access, and they have captioning access. Mm-hmm. It is a much more accessible festival now.
Sundance's platform was, once I was watching the movie, once it started, they have a bunch of preamble things that you watch. Mm-hmm. It was lovely.
Yeah.
And I think, by the way, doing this at the film festivals, I don't know what the economics of it are, but these are very expensive things to attend. Like these big ones, the Sundances, the South by Southwest, like this is not, these are not like normal people aren't. What a great way to get your movie out and have people also participate in the festival. So I watched this film because an actor that I follow, Rivka Reyes, they put on their Instagram a reference to this film they'd been in called Onyx, the Fortuitous, and the Talisman of Souls.
Wow.
Now, already with a name like that,
So much.
and because I know Rivka seems to have a great, dark sense of humor, and that Rivka was in it, so I'm already excited to see it. The title, though, speaks to me. I'm like, this sounds like horror comedy right away. I love horror comedy.
Yeah.
And so I watched this film last night, and I can describe it as Napoleon Dynamite meets Rocky Horror Picture Show. That's how I would describe it. Very, very funny, very, very odd, but with the sweetness to it, with a heart and sweetness to it. And there is a couple musical moments, but there's like a brief musical quote of Somewhere Out There from American Tail. And a straight up performance of I Would Do Anything for Love, but I Won't Do That for Meatloaf. In this film about 5 people going to find their devil worshipping master and help with a ritual after winning an online contest. And it also has Charlie and the Chocolate Factory vibes because there's like 5 people are going to be. Anyways, I thought this movie was so for me, but the way it used, and I did not know anything about it, but the way it used music and the way it used the Meatloaf thing, because they foreshadow a little bit and then they delivered it was
that's great.
It just blew me away. And then I can't talk about music and movies without talking about RRR.
Okay, good. Whew. I was like, are we going to talk about Natu or not?
Well, Natu. I mean, first of all, I have this new attitude towards Oscars, which is that everyone who's nominated deserves to be nominated, right? Like, it's hard to make a movie. These are very talented people. Like, yes, there are snubs, but like, you really shouldn't take away from the nominees, right? But I do have lists of people that I think are on equal footing and could win. And RRR, to me, should have been nominated as Best Picture. It's on Netflix for anyone who wants to watch. Should have been nominated as Best Picture. It absolutely should win for Natu, the song. It could win for any of the songs in that movie. This is a movie about the horrors of colonialism, an inspiring movie about the horror of colonialism that is also an action movie, also a superhero movie, also a bromance, also a fairy tale, and also a musical. Yes. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
The scene where Beam and Ram, the 2 main characters, become friends. So that's even before Natu, which has a best friend shoulder piggyback montage scene where they're just like dancing in the field where one guy's on the shoulders of the other guy.
Yeah, it's the montage of becoming friends, and then that like on his shoulders is like the Chekhov's gun of the movie.
It pays off.
It pays off so well.
Never have I ever, because you're watching that and you're like, I've never seen like this before, and then it pays off at the end of the movie.
Yeah,
and you're like, whoa.
Everything in that montage pays off.
Yeah. You're like, whoa.
Riding the horse, riding the motorcycle, the bridge rescue, all comes back at the end.
Oh my God.
Right?
Yeah. And that movie uses music and I'm not familiar. It's a Tollywood movie, but I'm not familiar really with a lot of Bollywood or Tollywood or anything like that. So I get that there are people who are watching, there are people who follow Indian cinema who this is the best of that, but it's not unheard of for an American. It's really not our formula. And it was the most refreshing, exciting, big screen experience. I didn't get to see it on a big screen, but I saw it on a small screen.
It was such an amazing. I think I watched it after you had recommended it. And this was after, like, it was recommended on the Doughboys. It was recommended on How Did This Get Made? It was, like, all these podcasts I listened to recommended it. And then you did. And I was like, okay, now I'll watch it.
I know How Did This Get Made in some ways couldn't do an episode of it because they loved it, but I would also love to hear them break down that movie, because from the perspective of someone who has never seen a movie like this, you're watching it and you're just dumbfounded throughout and you're loving it.
Yes, I agree. It would be amazing. So I watched it at home on I just have a TV. I don't have a sound system. I just have a TV. And it was wonderful. And then I had the experience of seeing it in a movie theater.
Oh my gosh.
700 people, sold out screening with the director doing a Q&A.
Whoa.
Yeah. And that was I mean, people cheering. There are videos on Twitter. People kept taking their phones out to video crowd reactions.
Yeah. Because that's what that movie's like.
And it was amazing. Like, my hands hurt from clapping during Naatu Naatu. They gave us permission before. They really were like, it's okay if this gets rowdy. Like, if you want to dance, get up and dance. There were standing ovations. There was so much cheering. And the director talked about how many days of filming for Naatu Naatu, there was something like 100 different choreographies so that people would be dancing together, but like differently. Wow. So it would look spontaneous. And so people would dance for like 12 hours on set that day and then go back to their hotels and rehearse for 6 more hours.
Oh my God.
People were pushed to their limits in that scene.
It's incredible because it's a dance scene that is truly an action scene. And I also want to say, when you talk about love for this movie, so I don't know if you use Podbeam, I use Podbeam. So one of the things Podbeam does, and they convince you to do, I'm not 100% sure what the value of it is, but they automatically post the episodes to YouTube.
Yeah.
And most of my episodes that go on YouTube get like a couple of views because our audience is really from the subscribers or from Instagram clips. The RRR episode that we put up has 3,500 views on YouTube. It's the most of anything I've ever put on YouTube.
How many?
3,500. 3,500. And like tons of comments and stuff.
Yeah.
Because this movie is an absolute sensation.
Yeah.
Absolute sensation.
So this week I watched Days of Heaven.
Oh, what's that?
It's Richard Gere, it's like 1986. A young Richard Gere. It's a cinematic tone poem. Let me look up who. 1978.
Wow.
A hot-tempered farm laborer convinces the woman he loves to marry their rich but dying boss so that they can lay claim to his fortune.
Okay.
It's Terrence Malick directed it.
Okay, because I have to tell you, I mean, again, brilliant filmmaker. Don't think I've liked a single thing that guy's ever made.
So I watched this because my number one Hollywood crush, Jason Mantzoukas, mentioned it on a podcast.
He's so sophisticated, though. Like, me not liking Terrence Malick is not an indictment of Terrence Malick. Let's be clear. I don't understand it.
But it opened with, it's been a long time since I've watched a movie, and the classical music, the orchestral music it was opening with, I was like, what is this? I must know what this is. It was really, wow. I was like, did I play this music? How do I know this music? What other soundtracks has it been on? It was I had a very visceral reaction to the orchestra, and that hasn't happened to me in a long time. That's
cool. Yeah, it does stand out when a movie has like the old-fashioned orchestral score. So RRR, which has this great music and music scenes throughout,
it's amazing.
Also has an incredible, and this leads to my third and final theme.
Yeah.
An incredible end credit scene, which we did in a breakdown, and I have to thank Ruchi Mohinder, who helped us break down and explain the cultural context of the finale credits musical scene, because it goes into history of Indian revolutionaries, but it's also
right, because it's revolutionaries from like every province,
right? Exactly,
or like
from all the different states in India. And the dancers come back as the cast are dancing as themselves, not as their character. Right. Exactly.
It's fascinating.
It's like those. So that led me to think, wow, there are some great credit music moments, and there's famous ones like James Bond. One that stands out to me is always "Catch Me If You Can." But now I have again some odd picks, but ones that just so. On HBO Max is the show Peacemaker, which got clearly that and Suicide Squad got James Gunn. He's now in charge of the whole DC universe. And rightly so. Guy's amazing. And if they let him do Like, let him do his thing. It's going to be
Yeah.
fantastic.
Okay.
But the opening song sequence of Peacemaker, I just watch over and over again as a music video on its own. Because it's a choreographed, almost like Broadway type of number, but with John Cena and the rest of the cast of this uber violent
superhero
show. Yeah.
Okay.
It has oh my God, what's his name? Is it Jason? No, it's not Jason Patrick. It's who's the guy? Not Jason Patrick. I always mix up the names. The guy who played the Terminator, the T-1000.
Oh, I'm like Arnold
Robert Patrick.
Schwarzenegger?
Robert Patrick. No, he played the T-800. So that one is like, it's incredible. Like, the show is actually great, but that opening sequence, you watch it and you're like, people don't do this anymore. This is amazing. It's a lot like, do you remember the old Drew Carey 5 O'Clock World opening? For the Drew Carey show, when they used to play 5 O'Clock World, and there was like the musical opening and all the cast dancing.
Cleveland Rocks.
So there's Cleveland Rocks, and then there's 5 O'Clock World was the other one. I'll show it to you after.
I only remember Cleveland Rocks.
But it was a musical. It was a musical number opening, and then what I would say is the greatest closing credits scene of all time. Now, this is a deep cut, and if you haven't seen this, just you should check it out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to pitch you a movie.
All right.
It's called Buckaroo Banzai and the Adventures Across the Eighth Dimension.
Mm-hmm.
The final scene is just the cast walking.
Okay.
Maybe it's the LA River. I don't know if it's LA River, but it's like that kind of a thing.
Right.
To the theme music of the film, which is this really cool keyboardy kind of stuff. And it's just the epitome of 80s cool.
Mm-hmm.
But the cast of this movie is Peter Weller, who played RoboCop, and who's also gone on to direct a lot of stuff. And so Peter Weller, Ellen Barkin,
mm-hmm.
John Lithgow plays the villain, John Worfen. Christopher Lloyd plays one of the other villains.
All right.
Dan Hedaya, who you might remember from, what's Dan Hedaya most? He's just one of the classic character actors. He was in. We just rewatched. Addams Family, the first Addams Family movie, and he's the bad guy, Tully, the lawyer.
Okay.
It also includes Clancy Brown, who was in Highlander, but also a very famous voice actor. And wait, I'm saving the best for last. Jeff Goldblum.
Amazing.
Plays a neurosurgeon from New Jersey who dresses like a cowboy. And Peter Weller, the main guy, Buckaroo Banzai, is a special operative neurosurgeon, astrophysicist, samurai, alien fighter. Anyways, the best closing credits scene of any movie ever.
Yeah.
And then
I have an opening credits for you.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to hear it.
The opening credits of my best friend's wedding.
Oh, what song is that?
Wishing and Hoping.
Yeah.
And it's none of the actors from the movie. It's not
Doesn't that have another musical scene in that movie too?
It has yes. So then there's the karaoke scene in like Dick's Last Resort, where the bride, who's Kimmy, is Julia Roberts thinks if I can get Kimmy to sing karaoke and fail, the Michael will fall out of love with her. And of course it's just ends up being just endearing.
And Cameron Diaz is the singer, right? Is it Cameron Diaz? Yeah, and she can sing.
But the opening credits to it is like a very highly stylized 1960s wedding music video. And there's a blonde woman as the bride, but it's not Cameron Diaz. And none of the people in the opening are in the movie. It's just a whole thing that lives on its own.
That's great. That's fantastic. And then other closing credits ones. That's fantastic. That's great. I forgot about that. I don't think about that movie a lot because Pretty Woman just overshadows it.
Well, this is where I think
Oh, no, wait.
Our
My
genders
best friend's
and
wedding,
ages.
I'm mixing up with Runaway Bride.
Yeah.
My best friend's wedding, Allie watches that a lot. She loves that. Who's the husband? Who's the best friend? Who's the guy?
Peter Gallagher is the gay best friend who shows up to save her.
Is this a Dylan McDermott situation?
Yeah.
Or Dermot Mulroney, one of them?
One of them, yeah.
Do you ever seen that SNL skit, Dylan McDermott or Dermot Mulroney?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's... Okay, there you go.
It's one that, like, seems so romantic.
Dermot Mulroney.
When we... Like, I was interning that summer at Iowa State University, program for women in science and engineering. And the kind of group of girls I went to, we all went to see that in the movies, in a movie theater together. And then we road trip to Chicago for a weekend. And the movie takes place in Chicago. And it just seemed like so grown up and so romantic. But like Kimmy was our age. Kimmy is a 20-year-old college student marrying a 30-year-old sports writer. And it's Julia Roberts and the sports writer, the husband character, had made a pact in their 20s. If we're still single when we're 30, we'll get married to each other. And then, like, he's marrying Kimmy. And
well, that is a movie that really, that like, maybe the movie age is fine, but the premise of it, it's like watching a movie before cell phones.
Yeah, she does have a cell phone in it, and it is huge. It's very funny. But it's like...
30? Who's getting married at 30?
Yeah. It was... When I rewatched it in my 30s, I was like, oh my God, Julia Roberts is the villain.
Yeah, she totally is.
She's the villain. It's not a rom-com. It's a rom-villainy com.
Does she
I don't
win
know.
the husband back at the end? Does she
No.
win Dermot Mulroney?
No.
Oh, he marries...
He marries the girl he's in love with.
Oh, okay, that's good. Good for him.
Yeah.
I hope they're happy.
Yeah.
I've never sat through the whole movie.
No.
All
it's
those
fine.
wedding date movies, Allie watches them like all the time.
Mhm.
So I've absorbed all of them. They all have Dermot Mulroney in them.
Yeah. What do you think about... So I have a thing where I have beloved movie soundtracks of movies I've never seen.
Oh, that's totally cool. Especially growing up when we grew up, because movie soundtracks were so important.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I had the Who Made Who soundtrack. The Who Made Who, sorry. It was a Maximum Overdrive soundtrack.
Yeah.
It's an album called Who Made Who by AC/DC. Because
Nice.
it's like a killer AC/DC album.
Yeah.
Because it has like a combination of greatest hits and some unreleased songs like Who Made Who. I never seen that. It's Maximum Overdrive. That album's great.
It was such a sneaky way to get a professionally curated mixtape, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I have never seen Reservoir Dogs, but that is an outstanding soundtrack.
Oh, that's
And
on my
Quentin
list of
Tarantino.
greatest. That's one of my list of like obvious greatest moments. The opening scene of those guys walking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you see it even is brought back in Reservation Dogs, because that's what they're referencing in Reservation Dogs,
Nice.
which is truly one of the greatest pieces of media I've ever seen. Is that show?
Yeah.
By the way, if you have a chance, it's perfection.
Dazed and Confused, great soundtrack.
Have you
Never
seen the movie?
saw it.
Never seen
Huh?
it.
Never seen it.
Wow, you have some fun movies to go back and watch.
Yeah.
Like Dazed and Confused, that's a fun watch.
It's a super fun. I know it's super fun, but somehow I'm sure I took both of these CDs from my sister, because she probably did see the movies and then bought the CDs, and then I swiped them from her. Sorry, Rain.
Yeah.
And then the other soundtrack that I obviously had seen the movie, but that I think is one of the greatest soundtracks of all time, is Forrest Gump.
Oh, that soundtrack, again, that was when movies came out
Yeah.
and you freaked out to buy the soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Oh, and
that,
Trainspotting.
yeah, that's another amazing one.
Trainspotting had two...
Lust
it
for
had
Life? Isn't Lust for
yeah.
Life on that?
Trainspotting had the soundtrack, the orange one,
Mm-hmm.
and then a supplementary one in green of music that wasn't in the movie, but was like so good it should have been. And it was the vibe of Trainspotting, and it was a second soundtrack, but none of the music
the
was
brand
in the
of the movie sold the
Mhm.
music. Well, that's
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes they would say music inspired by, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's well, Grosse Point Blank is another great one. They had
Yeah.
had 2 discs. My dad listened to that one nonstop.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the era of great movie soundtracks. Now you just go on and find the Spotify mix,
Mm-hmm.
right? They don't sell, and I don't know the business and the politics of making the soundtracks, but I do know that there's like a whole section in the CD Cellar, which is the awesome used record store that I go to around here, of soundtrack CDs.
Yeah.
And they just have, I mean, I picked up the Back to the Future one once. Back to the Future one. That one's like, that's also just part of music history, because Back to the Future was when Ray Parker Jr. ripped off Huey Lewis to make the Ghostbusters song and ripped off I Want a New Drug. The way Universal made up for it with Huey Lewis, I think, as far as I understood, was they gave him a song on the Back to the Future soundtrack. It's something like that. And that's how you got Power of Love. It's something to do with that. It is something, there's some sort of bouncing ball of that. But yeah, the era of soundtracks that's a whole episode of your show, which is like and now I just don't, there are shows though. One thing I do love is that TV shows, there's some TV shows with amazing music curation. And that's really fun to go follow on Spotify, because in the old days, like when you had Scrubs, right? They released that one album of Scrubs songs and then like never again, because they probably didn't have the budget to release one. But now if they're using music, if it's not music made for the show, then you can go and just see people are making the mixes. Like there's a show, Chuck has some of the best music I think ever on a show. That has one of my all-time favorite music moments. There's another, have you seen any of the shows? Have you seen Patriot or Perpetual Grace Limited?
No.
From Stephen Conrad?
No, but somebody came on and told me about Perpetual Grace Limited.
Was it me? I don't know. Perpetual Grace Limited is phenomenal. Hopefully one day we'll get, it doesn't need a conclusion, but it would be cool if it had a conclusion.
Yeah.
Like,
because it's like Office Workers in Heaven. It's no.
No, that's, I don't know what that is. Perpetual Grace Limited is a crime show. It's like Coen Brothers, very Coen Brothers-esque.
I guess the title Perpetual Grace makes me think of like, how do I keep you in perpetual grace?
Yeah, Perpetual Grace.
It sounds very
Perpetual
religious
Grace
to me.
is I believe the name of a corrupt church in the story, in this crime story. In both of those shows, Steve Conrad puts together bands in Patriot and like he created this band called the Jones Sisters, but it's really him and some other musicians.
Yeah.
And they do the soundtrack of the show. Some of it's covers, some of it's originals. There's a version that's not on the soundtrack, probably for some complicated rights reason, but there is a moment where they do this haunting version of When Doves Cry by Prince in a scene in that show. It's incredible. Now, that show's on Epix, so good luck finding it.
Yeah.
But I just buy it on iTunes.
It was my episode on surrealism. Perpetual Grace
has a lot of surrealism.
As an example of a surreal TV show.
There is a lot of surreal dreaminess in his work. But Patriot, which is on Amazon Prime, 2 seasons, masterpiece, amazing music. So wait, back to end credits. I want to shout out for my sisters, Lily and Becky, my co-hosts, my creative partners, David Spade, Sophie Marceau, Lost and Found, the movie where David Spade plays a restaurateur who kidnaps his beautiful classical musician neighbor's dog in order to spend more time with her. And
with the dog or with the neighbor?
With the neighbor, because he's in love with this impossibly beautiful woman.
So he takes her dog?
Yeah, he dog naps her dog. This is very 90s. This is very 90s humor, right?
Yes.
Right, because can you imagine you lose your like, how distraught would you be if your dog was missing and then this guy's like dating her while he's kidnapped her dog? But like now it would be made as a very dark movie. Yeah. But then it was like a, mistaken identity, wacky, It has 2 incredible music moments. One during the movie, during the climax of the movie, and this scene involves Martin Sheen, by the way. There is a performance of Neil Diamond's Salvation Train, the brother, you know that song?
Nope.
Brother Love Salvation Train. Okay.
No.
It's incredible. David Spade performs it. But at the end of the movie, non sequitur, not related to anything else in the movie, they do one of those cast lip syncs like they did at the end of Something About Mary to D-Light's Groove Is in the Heart.
Nice.
And it's just the cast goofing around together. And who doesn't love watching a cast goof around together?
Yeah. I like anytime you get a sense of like the real friendship that they formed during.
Yeah.
You know.
And then most recently, did you watch Fleischman Is in Trouble yet?
I watched the first 5 minutes. I don't think I care about Jesse Eisenberg dating and his wife disappearing. I don't know. People love it. People are obsessed with it. And I
would say the type of show that it is, which is essentially like unhappy people in their 40s sorting out their issues,
right,
is not my kind of show, especially ones that do have a lot of great things in their lives. Although Josh Radnor's character really also like addresses that directly towards the end. So, and I thought, by the way, Josh Radnor, I don't know if he's appreciated, underappreciated, but he is fantastic in that show.
Okay.
I tuned in because I heard how amazing the Jewish content was in it. And so I was committed to it, and the Jewish stuff in it is wonderful. But the last scene over the credits at the end of the full 8 episodes is Lizzie Kaplan doing like in a dance class, like a dance class for, I don't know if it's moms but it's like an amateur dance class.
Yeah.
To Total Eclipse of the Heart. And it just erases all of the tension that you had in the show. And the show doesn't like leave you with everything resolved, but it sends you off just so happy. And it's so beautifully done. And because she's not perfect, it's really about her, I think, about her finding her place in the world in a way. Mm-hmm. And it's told through this musical scene, and it's told to our generation of people, right? These people are exactly our age.
Right.
They're dealing with the stuff that people our age are dealing with. And there's something about the way they close that scene in the credits that just really sends you off with a sense of optimism and peace. That's really, really great.
All right. Maybe I'll give it another go.
That's my ending note on music and movies and television. And I could keep going, but you know, I already think your listeners have heard enough of me in the last year.
It's a good long list of recommendations.
Oh yeah. I snuck those in. Very Friday Night Movie style. A lot of recommendations.
Yeah, no, well done. Great. Well, Shai, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me personally at Pancake for Table, Pancake for the Table. We could do an episode on pancakes at some point. Pancake and the number 4 Table on all the socials. Or you can go to @Fry Night Movie, FRI Night Movie on the socials, or frynightmovie.com on our newly rejuvenated website that has all sorts of cool stuff cooking on it. And follow the show, and I don't know, we talk about movies.
Yeah, it is at minimum a weekly podcast.
At minimum.
And during kind of film festival, Comic-Con seasons, you ramp up, and sometimes you release like every day for a week, which is an editing feat I do not understand. But it keeps your interviews timely. You're not banking them to give yourself 6 months of, like, I really appreciate that you do that, because you're keeping things timely. And you're not banking so far that like, oh, well, we don't have to record again for 6 weeks. Well, so much pop culture has happened in 6 weeks.
Yeah, the most we'll have once in a while is like 4 weeks. And that just has to do with like our schedules, or if we do have an incredible run of guests and we want to space them out and stuff. But yeah, we weekly, every Friday, 7:01 a.m. Eastern time. Well, I'm so happy to be here. It's so great to see you. I love this show so much.
It's so good to catch up. Yeah, you can follow whatever my podcast is called.
Finding Favorites with Leah Jones.
Finding Favorites. Please rate and review on Apple Podcasts or whatever app you're using. If you would have feedback for me, I finally set up a Gmail account for the podcast, and that is findingfavoritspodcast@gmail.com. So you can send me an email there if you've got feedback or you want to pitch yourself as a guest. And follow the podcast Finding Faves Pod on Twitter and Instagram. I'm Chicago Leah. And that's all I got. Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Finding Favorites with Leah Jones. Please make sure to subscribe and drop us a 5-star review on iTunes. Now, go out and enjoy your favorite things.